Columbia. This is Houston, AOS, over.
Welcome, everybody, to the Knicks Wall podcast. I feel really strange saying that, but we are just making some slight changes to the pod, bringing you some improvements every day. We got some big announcements on the horizon. One thing that won't be changing are my co-hosts. I got Kyle Maggio here.
What's going on, everybody?
And, of course, I got Bryan Gibberman.
I need people to stop bitching about Rockets Warriors and just enjoy it.
I'm glad the officiating talk has died down, but I feel like it kind of hasn't now. It's just at the point now where people are just like, it's being fairly officiated, so people can't stop talking about how it's being fairly officiated. And now the conversation is still all about refs. So we got some of that. We got some complaining about the series, the promised matchup. Before we get to all that, make sure you guys are subscribed to this podcast and give us a 5-star review. Please head over to the knickswall.com. We've got some fabulous content coming up. A lot of draft-heavy material coming out. We got some special, exciting things on the horizon there, too, so just keep an eye out. We real excited for the summertime, real excited for the months coming up to the draft now. And for right now, we're just sitting back. We're taking in the playoffs. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us all on Twitter at Corbo Anthony, at Bryan Gibberman, at Kyle Maggio. Let's talk a little Rockets Warriors before we get into this. We're also going to be talking to Chris Barnwell later on today about the Hornets, as well as Anthony Irwin from Locked on Lakers, and we're going to just talk about their free agents and see where a potential fit on the Knicks may be, if they might be looking at any of our players, and just kind of general talking about our off seasons. But before we get to all that, Rockets Warriors. Bryan, let's start with you. Well, you're saying that you want people to just shut up and enjoy the series. What are you loving about it?
It's I don't think people appreciate how good the Rockets are, and how Steve Kerr treats the Rockets exemplifies that. Dude, he doesn't start Draymond Green at center against any team. Like, he doesn't do it. In Game 7 of the series they lost against the Cavs, he was still playing Ezeli and Bogut at centers, like, for not half the game, but it was like, I want to say it was like 14 to 16 minutes, and they got destroyed in those minutes. So he doesn't show this type of respect to any team they play. And how hard, like, the Warriors, like, they went 6 games with the Clippers, but they just don't try. Like, you watch these games, and it's the Warriors playing hard for 48 minutes. There's, like, I don't think the Cavs in the finals last year made the Warriors play like this. And,
they did not.
Yeah, and that so I don't think people grasp how good the Rockets are. Like, if I've said this on Twitter, and I said it in our chat, if KD leaves next year, the Warriors, and goes wherever, the Rockets are going to be the favorites to win it all. This is a really, like, we don't get to watch basketball like this with teams this good, with this much talent on the floor. And the struggles that are coming, I think, is more about how good these two teams are defensively rather than ugly offense. It's more like they have how they just take away the Capella lob. Like, I've never seen it. Like, they've rendered Clint Capella. The Warriors have rendered Clint Capella useless.
Totally unplayable.
Series. Yeah, because either Durant, Clay, Draymond, whoever's helping from that corner on the lob, they're either closing it off so there's no angle to make the pass, or they're getting up and they're contesting it out on the pass. And it's just amazing defense to watch on both. And the Rockets' defense is damn good, too.
So, like, I just want to go back on that, what you were saying, that the Rockets, if Durant were to leave the Warriors and come, possibly to the Knicks or any other teams around the league, like, you're saying the Rockets would be the favorites. You don't think that a team like Denver, with how well Jokic is playing right now, or, even some of the East teams, and, we'll see what it has to do with all them. But, I mean, You don't think that there's even another team like out west that might be able to supersede the Rockets as soon as next year, provided the Warriors are out of the equation?
I mean, stuff could happen, but no, James Harden is a cheat code. He just, like, you put the ball in his hands and a defense is compromised. Like, I've never seen, I really haven't. I've never seen, he just dribbles right by people. Like, there's not a single player in the league that can stay in front of him. He just breaks down a defense. And as long as they have the right role players around him, that team is just going to be off the charts good.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily believe in the Rockets to win it all next year. You're going to have an age 35 Chris Paul, and I think we're going to start seeing him be more like Kyle Lowry is this year than he is to his former star self. So I don't know. I don't fully buy it, but obviously if Kevin Durant leaves, then that's half the battle. So I could be talked into it. I think it's more of a LeBron leaves the East and then the East is wide open thing than it is the Rockets are just next in line. I could see the Rockets getting bounced too. Like, especially if they throw up another dud. Like, even if these are competitive games, if they get swept in this series or it's a 5-game series, like, it's going to be really hard for me to talk myself into it, despite the Warriors being a little bit weaker next year. You know, it's still, to me, it would just be, it just wouldn't be enough. I just wouldn't be sold yet. It wouldn't be convincing.
I'm upset that they didn't win one of these first 2 games. Like, the first game, it was.
They should have had the first one.
You know what's kind of funny? I think the second one is the one that, look, the lead was a little bit bigger and they didn't get, and Paul missed that 3 at the end, but they hit 16 threes. They turned the ball. They were like a -8 in turnovers and gave up 18 offensive rebounds. The Warriors took 14 more shots. On like a possession by possession basis without the other stuff, the Rockets played a better game than them, but they just couldn't. They gave away possessions and they couldn't close out possessions. Like, they really should have won that game too. I
think the first half stats from the last game, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was first half or after 3 quarters. It wasn't when the game was decided yet. I know that, but at one point the Rockets had 0 points off turnovers and the Warriors had 20. Yeah, and that was the game right there. Like, you know, the Rockets simply didn't capitalize on Warriors' mistakes, and the Warriors capitalized on all the Rockets' mistakes. And despite the Rockets playing well in seemingly all the other facets of the game, it just wasn't enough. Like, you can't hiccup against the Warriors. That's why even without Durant next year, I'm not sold that it's going to be enough. I think they're still going to be a very, very good team, even with the limited funds they have to improve if Durant leaves. You know, it's going to be tough. I don't know.
I think one of the X factors on that, I mean, if Durant leaves, I could see them still being very, very competent team next year. I worry about Klay Thompson leaving. Like,
no, he's not going.
There's no chance.
Well, I mean, there's definitely, I'm just saying, like, his role on that offense is highly underrated, I think still. I feel like the way that the chance of Klay Thompson leaving this summer has been talked about is closer to like Harrison Barnes than it is to like Kevin Durant. And I think that it should be a different occasion.
Anthony, if he leaves, I'd like to make I will announce this now on the pod. I will let you write a full page of compliments about yourself, and I will cold open the podcast, whatever episode is after Klay leaves, and I will read the entire thing to begin the podcast of just compliments of Anthony Corbo. And I will do so for the duration of whatever you write if Klay Thompson leaves. I just do not believe that he's going to leave.
I mean, I can get behind that.
Wow, that's it?
Yeah.
I give you a whole page in this bed, a whole page of compliments you rate yourself, and I can get behind that. Unbelievable. Let you be ecstatic. There's no pleasing you.
So, I mean, what else could be the threat to the Warriors, though? Like, we're talking about a scenario where, you know, like I'm really more fascinated in this whole conversation here. It's what else could be that threat? Like, because I don't necessarily think that Houston is the favorite if Durant leaves next year. I still think that that Golden State would be the leader out there, or that there's enough, you know, inside the Western Conference to be able to catch up to them a little bit quicker. Like, I'm so Houston's future is just so hazy to me. I don't know.
The problem where the Warriors are going to run into is even if KD leaves, they still have no flexibility. Like they're going to have an exception. They're not going to have cap space to go sign someone. So it's going to be the top 3 players, and then it's going to be Clay, Curry, and Draymond, which is very clearly still good enough to be the top 3 players on a title team. They've done it before. But where the issue is going to come in is they have no depth. They're going to have no depth. Like their depth already isn't good. They're going to have to go above. They're going to have to pay. Looney's a free agent, and he's a very good player for them. Like what he does defensively, he's a key part to what they've done this year, and it's going to cost a good amount of money. I mean, I'd figure he's probably getting. I know centers have gone down, but he's had to play himself to at minimum $6 million a year. Possibly, I think it could probably go as high as 10, depending on the market. They're going to have depth issues, and if Curry or Clay or Draymond gets hurt, or they age a little bit and they're not the same players, which I don't think that's going to. Draymond, it seems like it was just a getting in shape thing. He's right back to who he was. And if they're all the same, I mean, it's going to be about whether the role players can give enough to help get them over the top.
And if I'm not mistaken, aren't Iguodala and Sean Livingston free agents this year?
Give me 1 second. I have the salary pages open because of what we got going on later.
I have a spot rack up, but I just wasn't sure.
Wait, what did you call it?
Spot rack?
No way. Isn't it like Sport Track?
It is spelled out on my screen, SPOTRAC.
Okay, I'm the one wrong then. Fine. Draymond, who'd you ask?
I will say, if you heard the way I read it, in my head, I read it that way. Like I read it as Sport Track. And then when I said it out loud, I thought, oh God, there's no way it's Spot Rack. That sounds ridiculous for a sports contract website to be called Spot Rack.
It just looks like it has letters missing everywhere.
Yeah, but it's very clearly there, right? I mean, I'm not insane.
All right, so Iguodala is signed next year for $17 million. Livingston is non-guaranteed for $7 million, so they could get out of that if they wanted to. I don't know how much of it's guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, Iggy's 35, and I just wonder when this song and dance with him is going to end, where he does the whole "I don't try hard at all for the regular season, but then I'm always the exact same version of myself in the playoffs." So I wonder when that's eventually going to come to an end. Livingston's actually looked okay in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, at least against the Rockets. He's been doing his normal turnaround, hitting shots in the post bullshit. So, I mean, those are like little wrinkles to the Warriors that I think people overlook too. Like, when is that eventually going to catch up? Like, when are we going to see Andre Iguodala actually look like he's 36 years old next year? You know what I mean? So it's like that kind of stuff I almost worry about more than I worry about who these little mid-level players that they're going to try to get next year to fill these roster spots. I feel like someone will maybe take less or whatever. I'm almost not too concerned with that. I'm more worried about how they're maintaining like these secondary wrinkles, I'll call them. Like, once KD leaves, the shots are just going to go back to Steph and to Clay. Like, that. And they have no problems with that. They're going to launch a zillion threes. They're going to do what they did beforehand. It's going to be fine.
They're going to be fun to watch again.
Yeah, but then it's like, what about those like change of pace kind of things? Or like, Iguodala's great in transition for them. What about that? It's like those little things are what I think about, I guess, a little bit more, or worry about a little bit more. And at least for Iguodala, like, who's going to be there next year, I just wonder when his luck's going to kind of run out, with Father Time. But he's also always in incredible shape, so this could all be for nothing.
I think Andrew Bogut's the key here.
Oh, God. Nobody enjoy talking about less than Andrew Bogut.
All right, yeah, he's a douche. I'm good.
Well, who you guys taking this year? It's like, how many games do you think this goes to?
I think it goes 5.
You think it goes 5?
Kevin Durant's been out of his mind, and the Rockets have played 2 really good games, and it wasn't good enough. And I know it's going to go back to Houston now, but I just can't see the Rockets winning, 2 out of the next 3. To me, it's just not. They played really good games the first 2, and it wasn't enough. And Harden erupted after getting his eye basically gouged out of his skull last game, and he came back and he just torched them, and just wasn't enough. Like that's what it always is with the Warriors. It's just never enough. So especially with Durant. Durant's averaging like 38 points in the playoffs or whatever stupid thing he's done the last 6 games or 5 games. So I don't know, man. I just don't see it. I have the Warriors in 5 here.
I'd say 5-2, but I'm just hoping we get a game 4 with it 2-1. And we get that, because that game would be, that's your series right there. That would be fun.
That's always a really good game in those situations.
Especially with 2 teams this good. Like that, if I get that, I can live with whatever else happens.
It's just good. It's how you open the pot too. It's just good basketball, man. Like I hate staying up late. You guys know this, especially my Eastern time I always complain about. And I watched the entire game last night, and I just had a good time watching good basketball. And it's nice when we get to do that. And I'd like this series to go longer, selfishly. I just don't think it will.
I'm really upset that there's not another game on tonight after who's playing right now? Nuggets, Portland.
Yep.
There's only one game. There's only one game on Thursday.
Yeah.
There's 2 on Friday, and then Warriors Rockets game 3 is on Saturday.
I'm just
Portland series like sneaky good.
Yeah, that series has been really interesting. I liked the first couple of games from it. I mean, the Cantor thing sucks.
It's a funky matchup because, on one end, it's like Dame is obviously the focal point of the Blazers offense, and he just goes nuts and whatever. But then on the other end, it's Jokic, my boy, as everybody knows. And it's just like the 2 dynamics, but it's still fast-paced and free-flowing. And they're very fun games. Like even now, like these guys are just sprinting up and down the court almost every other possession, or just chucking, these nice little pocket passes and things like that. So I'm having a good time watching this series. I feel like nobody's really talking about it enough.
We're going to be doing something new around here. We're going to be going around to some of the top people covering some of the other teams around the league, and just kind of talk to them about what their off seasons may look like and how that may impact the Knicks, and maybe what free agents they have that may be of interest to fill out our roster, or the same thing from our way around, and just kind of get into what is happening around the league to better influence us. And our first guest we're going to be having on for this is Chris Barnewall. He writes video game dialogue over at EA Sports, which I find absolutely fascinating. You're a writer at Dime as well. What's going on, man? It's a pleasure to have you on here to talk some Hornets.
It is great to be on. I have not talked about Hornets basketball specifically in a while, so I'm excited to kind of break out that old niche back from when I was still a blogger.
Yeah, I am. There's definitely a lot of names that I'm fascinated with on your roster. Some interesting options that I see that they could be pulling off. And, the conversation begins, of course, with Kemba Walker, who's been on one of the most team-friendly contracts around the league for, the last 4 years, I believe that contract was. And, now he's an unrestricted free agent. He's, had an incredibly hot start to the season. And he's going to get paid, and we'll see where he ends up in the All NBA rankings and all that. But I guess is it priority number 1 for the Hornets to retain Kemba Walker this offseason?
I think it depends on what they consider their future goals. So if they want to do what they've been doing, which is win now, just compete, be an actual competitive basketball team, absolutely, number 1 goal is keep Kemba Walker. That should be the number 1 goal. He gives you the best chance of winning long term. He is a player that makes them so much better than they actually have been in the past. He's a fan favorite. He's beloved. He's currently getting every single record that he doesn't already have. He said he loves Charlotte, so he wants to stay there. I actually believe him when he says that. I legitimately believe that he loves Charlotte and wants to stay there. So if he wants to stay around and they want to continue down the path they're going on, absolutely, 100%. That the number 1 goal should be keeping Kemba Walker. The real question to me is, should they make that their decision, or should both of the sides make the decision of, we know that if we stay together, we might not ever reach our potential ceilings. It might just be better to separate, which is kind of a hard decision to make for both sides, because I think they legitimately do want to stay together, but you kind of reach a point where the other side, no, it's not going to work.
I looked at, when I went to their contract page at Basketball Insiders, I was blown away. I knew it was bad. I didn't realize that they have to have the worst contract. Like their situation has to be the worst in the entire league, right?
It's close to it. And what's kind of disappointing is some of those were really defensible at the time because so they had one of their best seasons ever when they had Nicholas Batum on a contract here, of course. And he was phenomenal. He was great. He was exactly what they needed. They needed a second creator next to Walker to just be this guy that can take just some of the load off him. Like they can get feet on the ball in the corner. They can kind of help others be better. They can create for Walker when he's not around. They had a guy like Jeremy Lin coming off the bench at the time when Jeremy Lin wasn't still healthy before he had his knee injury. And he was great. He was like kind of helping him. So when Walker wasn't on the floor, he had these other creators around him. And then you just kind of look at what they have now, and it's players that were either one-hit wonders like Batum or guys that just aren't meeting expectations that they have for them, or players that were just meant to fix mistakes. If you remember correctly, they had Dwight Howard for a brief period of time. That was a disaster, so they traded him away.
Right.
Yeah. They got, I think, at one point they made a really weird trade with the Magic where they got Bismack Biyombo back through getting Tim. Oh, wait. I think it was they had Timothy Mozgov.
It's fascinating to even try to track like the center who's making $17 million for the season that has like 3 years left in his contracts that the Hornets have cycled through in the last like 3 or 4 years. It's like Biyombo, Mozgov, Howard. You had all these different guys just like coming through, and yeah, in large part it seems like it was just like, you know, moving, you know, taking on one problem to move one problem, but it didn't seem like, I can't really remember who the other players were or what the picks attained were on the other side of the deal.
I just do not for the life of me understand how Bismack Biyombo got paid so much money in the first place.
Rob Hennigan, ladies and gentlemen, Rob Hennigan.
Just like a decent amount I got. Like I understand the idea of him as a player and why you might be enticed to invest some money there. Like I got that much. But with how much money he got and for how many years, it was one of those like immediately I just didn't get. I just didn't.
It was a bad idea. It was one you knew immediately. It was like the Timothy Mozgov deal, which is hilarious because they got traded for each other. Like you knew immediately, oh, this is not good.
Well, it was almost. You remember the Evan Turner deal with the Blazers, and I think Evan Turner is obviously a pretty productive player, but just like remember that story that came out when he had a conversation with Andre Iguodala, where it was just like, oh, they offered you how much? Hang up the phone with me and go sign that deal now before they change their minds. And I just imagine, like, they came to Bismack's agent and they're just like, yeah, we're prepared to give him the contracts in front of me. 4 years, $72 million. We'll make 68 million guaranteed, 18 million on average. What do you say? And I would imagine that they had signed that deal yesterday.
All these deals are from the same summer. If that's what the going rate was because of the cap spike. And
even still, that one I was just like, no, that just.
Dude, go look at the contract Ian Mahimi got.
Listen, we had Joakim Noah. I understand.
So that's just it really is. That's the reality of what that summer was.
I get it.
And the Hornets had money that summer, and it was the year they had their best year in forever. Like they just got so unlucky in the fact that Batum ended up falling flat, and then they were left with money, and they had to go get guys like Biyombo to come back.
What kind of future assets or current assets on the team would they be willing to move to get out of either Batum or Cody Zeller?
I think they'd be willing to move Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I don't know how valuable it is to people. I think he's a phenomenal defender still, but I can see why that might not be considered a valuable piece.
No, not at $13 million.
I don't. The issue is he's so injury prone, but he was so talented defense. Like there was a period of time where he was anchoring their defense early on in his young career. I think defenses have kind of changed so much now to where maybe he can't do that anymore. He was kind of like a Kawhi Leonard light for a while, but he's just been so injured. So I understand being like a hesitant. He's still young, but I understand that hesitancy. I personally am not a Malik Monk guy. I feel like if they can package something like him and maybe a Dwayne Bacon for an asset here or two. I don't think they should move on for someone like Miles Bridges. I think Miles Bridges is too talented. I loved him in the draft. I think that's a piece to build with.
If a team went to you, you don't have to add anything else in, but we'll take on Batum's contract for the next 2 years, and you have to give us Bridges. Would you do it?
I say yes. As much as it really does depend on what's involved in the scenario here. It also depends on, okay, are you keeping Kemba Walker? And even if you are, who do you think you can get in free agency? Like, they have to be very sure they can get someone in free agency, because while creating cap space is great, if you create all that cap space and then go max Nikola Vucevic, you're just going through the same process again. You're doing it all over again.
What happens if they use it to try and build like the Nets did and take in, basically you're sacrificing Bridges to build a larger chest of assets?
I say that's a smart move, just because while I like Bridges a lot, I don't know if he's going to – so let's say they trade away Bridges and Bridges turns into a average star player, and you go, well, that stinks. We missed out on that one. I think that's a risk you take, because I don't think he's shown anything so early in his career like where you're like, no, we can't pass on that. It's just he's a very exciting young dunker, and while I think there's a lot of potential in there to get better, and there's possibilities of him improving even more. Like I said, I liked him a lot entering the draft. It's just they're in such the situation right now to where they really might just be like, we have to get rid of everything we can to just get rid of assets. Now, this is all in the scenario of we do keep Kemba Walker. So let's say they don't want to keep Kemba Walker, or they decide we have to just reset. In that case, I say you eat Batum's money as long as possible. Wait for the best possible deal. You are in no rush to get better. You are in no rush to win games. You just let that contract play out as long as it can until someone who's either desperate for a veteran player, like a playoff team, or just someone that's willing to just flip a lot of money to you. Like, that's when you kind of look for that scenario. It really all comes down to, are they keeping Kemba Walker and they want to rebuild as quickly as possible to make him win again? Or are they just going to go in the long-term reset plan? Because at that point, you do not get rid of a single young asset.
I got one more question, then you guys can jump in. Since I just brought up Bridges, that's one of the guys that I personally wanted the Knicks to take, but they ended up passing on him for Knox. How was rookie season?
I liked Bridges a lot. Obviously, there's growing pains that every rookie has to go through, but the fact that he just seemed to understand where he needed to be to get to the rim is so valuable in these younger players. Like, I don't think that's kind of appreciated enough, that when we get these younger guys, is that just the ability to know where you need to be is so important. And by the end of the year, he was taking veteran players minutes away. And yes, the Hornets were losing games, but they were still competing for a playoff spot, and he was still taking younger players minutes away. Older players minutes away. I really like him a lot. I think he can be really, really good. But again, he's not like he showed so much work. He didn't show Ben Simmons or Donovan Mitchell level rookie talent. He wasn't in the rookie of the year discussion in any particular way. Not that matters, but so it's not like this is a can't miss prospect, but I really like him a lot to improve. So, and he has those instincts. I just am curious how much he's really going to get that much better. It just seems to me like he's just going to be a really good starter.
I'm curious what you what do you think you're going to do with Frank Kaminsky coming up this year? He's an RFA this season. Are you guys at a point with him finally where you're just like, I'm done, I'm walking away, or is it like, is there kind of a sunk cost thing that you're feeling with him?
There's some negative feelings there. Kaminsky wasn't particularly happy when he got benched early in the year. I thought he was. I understood the people who thought he was not going to be a good pro. I thought he was going to be a good pro. He was a good shooter in college. He knew how to screen. He was a solid rebounder, but no, he's the 15th or 14th man. He's not particularly talented. He hasn't really improved at all since entering the NBA. And the way he has improved is just not there. It's time to let him go.
Yeah, I thought he's almost done exactly what I thought he was going to do, which is rare for any time you make a draft prediction, because that never works out for literally anybody. But I was like, yeah, like I got why he went in the lottery, but I didn't. I was like, normally in the lottery, you try to like take the higher upside guys. And I was like, Frank just kind of projects as like a very regular NBA player. Like that was my vibe at the time in college. I was like, he's going to hang around for a while. Like he can shoot. You know, he's kind of smooth with his offensive game a little bit. Like he's definitely got some moves there, but he'll always hang around. He'll find a way, but I don't see like that next gear, that next level, next couple of levels. I never saw that. So I was kind of surprised, but I wasn't when he got taken. And I don't know. It's kind of the vibe he's always given me. But yeah, he's just a very like regular NBA player. When I think of an average NBA player, I kind of just think of a Kaminsky. You know, it's not like to be rude to him, but you know,
no, it's just what he is. And Kaminsky was a classic Rich Cho Hornet and Michael Jordan Hornets draft pick, which was just they were always so. I kind of liked the strategy and hated it at the same time. So what they would do to build their team is they would go really safe in the draft. They would take guys like Cody Zeller, who were pretty likely to pan out. They were older guys. They had shown what they were going to be. You kind of knew what their projections were. And then they go swing big in free agency and trade. So they go make a Nicholas Batum deal, or they would go and put a bunch of money on Al Jefferson and kind of bank on him having a late career push like he did. And a lot of those worked out, and it was just really good thing. But then when it stopped working out, the money started sinking, and all of a sudden it fell apart really quickly because they didn't have the young assets to fall back on because their draft picks were all older guys and had low ceilings. So when you miss on the draft picks and you miss on the free agents and you miss on the trades, you end up with this salary cap sheet.
It's funny that you brought up Kaminsky. He was a guy who was linked to the Knicks. Where you talked about Bridges, he was linked to the Knicks. Monk, they took Frank. The Knicks took Frank over. Monk was one of the guys who was a pretty strong possibility, could have ended up in New York, even though it didn't happen. What's gone wrong for him his first 2 seasons in Charlotte?
He was actually solid last year. I like to say that last year was his actual rookie year just because Steve Clifford is a phenomenal coach. Steve Clifford hates a lot of rookies. Rookies are not good. No rookies are good. The ones that are good are still flawed. And flaws drive coaches nuts. They want every single player to know every small thing and know how to do absolutely everything. And the flaws in Malik Monk did not allow him to play much his first year. Last year, he showed some promise. He was able to shoot a lot better. He was such a much better shooter last year, which is important because if you're going to be a high-volume shooter, you better be a good shooter. And even though he was a 38% shooter from the field, like, he was able to at least improve, like, he went on these streaks, and those streaks mattered. And I know this sounds weird because you look at his per-game numbers, and they're god-awful terrible as far as from the field goes, but I swear to God, he improved as a shooter. Just please, I sound like a crazy person telling you to ignore the numbers, but you saw what he had. But next year is so important for him because he needs to make it to be like, okay, you actually put together streaks last year. You looked good in your flashes. You need to shoot better. You need to actually have it reflect back in the box score. If it doesn't reflect back in the box score, he's done. He's going to be a very short-lived NBA career because that's kind of been the big issue in his early career is that he's had no efficiency whatsoever.
Oh, so speaking of no efficiency, and this will make you feel better. So we took Frank Ntilikina in that draft. That's it. That's the line. Brian's probably raging over there, but I believe in Malik Monk. I really wanted him in that draft. I wanted him or Dennis, and now we have Dennis, so it is what it is. But I like Monk a bunch, and I still believe in him. And so I don't need to be talked into the ignore his per game numbers because I think there's a really good player in there. I think he's going to start figuring it out. I hope so anyway. But
the ball needs to start going to the hoop, though. Like when you shoot as much as when you shoot 8 times a game and shoot 38% from the field, like I don't even need to go to advanced analytics to explain how bad that is. Like
correct.
Like, you couldn't have picked a worse guy to stick him with in the backcourt than Kemba. And they both have no size. They both need the ball in their hands to be able to maximize their skills. You can't. It's funny. Like Frank would have been perfect with Kemba, and the Knicks could probably have used Monk's shot creation.
Right. Like it's almost. They're not going to do that trade now. The Knicks would never do that trade now just because Monk's honestly been worse than Maggio.
Oh, no.
You would?
No. They're super low.
I would.
You think the Knicks would or you would?
I wouldn't. I think Monk's skill set fits more what Scott Perry looks for in a player than what Frank does.
Which isn't a lot at this point, so... I'm just gonna lay it on now in case they make a trade on draft day.
Trade do you prefer?
Yeah, like I and you guys know, like this is I don't know if you've ever listened to this podcast, but I loved Frank for a long time. I believed in Frank for a long time, and then
he's bailed. He's completely.
Yeah, he jumped ship.
Brian's on a sinking ship with a flag.
Chris, I beg of you, go look at his numbers from like do the player A and player B thing, but make them both Frank and make them both years of Frank's career, and you let me know which is his rookie year and which one is his sophomore season.
We don't have to do this.
And then just let me know, because they are the exact same, almost scary.
We don't need to do this conversation again. We've had this discussion 8 times on our podcast.
We would enjoy Kemba Walker in New York. We would enjoy any talented basketball players in New York. So if you could find it in your heart to just let him go and embrace the hard rebuild, I would appreciate it. For one, Kemba would look good under the MSG lights, as would again any talented basketball player. So let him come our way.
Well, from what I've been told, you guys are getting Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and LeBron, and every single superstar that's ever been.
Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis.
Chris, that's the idea. Yes.
Now you're getting it. Thank you.
Yeah.
A plus team building here. I love it. It's like straight out NBA Live.
The only one I believe since the beginning was Durant. I was like, Durant, I can actually talk myself into for legacy play reasons. I was like, everybody else, like if we get anybody else, literally anyone else, if we get JJ Redick, I'd be like, oh, that's really fun. That's cool.
I cannot wait for them to have Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and be like, how'd this happen? This is so dumb.
All right, Chris, on Kemba real quick. He's always been the top dog on his team. How do you think he would do playing with another player who needs the ball in his hands a lot? How do you think he would fit with that?
I think he'd fit in pretty well. I think Kemba Walker is a leader at the heart, and I think he's willing to do what is needed for the team. He's going to get his shots just because that's his game, and if you're not letting him get his shots, you're misusing him because that's his game. He's at his best when he's attacking in defense and bending them. So I think but he can play with other players who need the ball, because don't forget, he played with Al Jefferson, and Batum needed the ball too. He knows how to play off ball. He knows how to be talented off ball. He's a great off ball shooter. He's improved that so much over the course of his career. So, like, as weird as it is, you want Kemba to get his shots and you want him to have the ball, but it's not like he can't do the other stuff off ball. So I think he'd fit in perfectly with a guy like a Durant or even a Kyrie, to be honest. I don't know why you'd pair them together, but just as an example of, like, he could play next to multiple guys that need the ball in their hand.
You said earlier when you first hopped on that Kemba, keeping Kemba was obviously priority A if you want to continue to be a competitive basketball team. But let's say he leaves. Is there a team you could see him going to? Is there a team there that you think is like, it just makes a lot of sense for him to go to, or you'd even like to see him go to? Or is it kind of a toss-up? Because I have one in mind that I think makes a whole hell of a lot of sense if Charlotte or Kemba did choose to move on, but I wanted to hear your opinion.
If he's trying to win, God, this hurts so much to say. If he's trying to win, go to the Lakers and play with LeBron, dude.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's where he was going with that.
Just go. Yeah, you are so much better than Lonzo Ball ever will be.
I have said too, but I would be happy with Kemba Walker in New York.
Oh, I think he'd love New York. I think if he does leave Charlotte, it's for New York. I think he loves Madison Square Garden. I think he likes New York. I don't think he cares. As much as he cares about winning, I think he's one of those guys that thinks he can win anywhere, so it won't bother him that much. But just from a pure, like, I need to win basketball game standpoint, like, just go to the Lakers.
No, I like that because to me it reminds me of like I wouldn't say a knockoff version because that's not fair because Kemba's, very, very good. But it's like a knockoff version sort of the Kyrie LeBron dynamic. Like,
right.
Like it's not exactly the same. Kyrie's a little bit better, obviously, but I think that's a very good fit. I think they could very easily work off each other. I think LeBron needs a guard like that to play with, at least, especially at this stage in his career. He needs somebody explosive and dynamic like that. So I think they'd have a ton of fun together. I'd like seeing them together.
And Kemba tries on defense way more than Kyrie does. Like, I know Kemba's not a great defender just because of natural limitations.
He's gotten a lot better.
He's one of the smartest defenders in the NBA. There was I think it was a year or two ago, he was like third or fourth in the league in charges taken. He's always in the right spot. He always knows where to be. He plays passing lanes well. He is a smart defender.
So, Chris, last couple of things before we get you out of here. James Borrego is an interesting interesting head coach to me because he was somebody that the Knicks were looking at pretty heavily when they were, considering, their head coaching search this summer too, and they ultimately went with David Fizdale. But, he was an intriguing option, just coming out of that system and just like being a, first time around as a head coach. And how would you say he's handled the situation? Do you think he's been able to kind of groom some of the young talent into, into performing on the court, or, I know this Hornets season wasn't necessarily an overall success on the court, but do you think there's like room to improve with him?
He is a really modern coach, and I kind of like that in Charlotte because they played such a non-modern style for so long under Steve Clifford. One of the first things I remember, he was in Orlando, and I was covering the game for Dime, and they played Gilchrist a lot, almost at center and power forward. And I asked him, I was like, what was that about? He's like, what do you mean, what was that about? I'm like, that was weird, wasn't it? He's like, no, that's what we're going to do. We're playing as a small ball four this year. He's a small ball four.
I like that.
And it was just like, all right, that's what he's going to do. And he was getting weird with his lineups. He was not afraid to put guys that were veterans on the bench for younger players. Like Malik Monk's minutes went up this year. Bridges played a lot. Kaminsky barely played because he was bad, but he was a veteran, and that means he got benched, even though he was older than some of these guys. And that is important. That matters when you need a coach to kind of come shake things up. He's not afraid to shake things up, and I don't know if that means he's going to end up being a good coach, but that kind of mindset of I'm willing to change stuff, and I'm willing to be risky. That's great. I think that's very good for the Hornets.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a different approach than what Steve Clifford had. And I guess really it all goes to show, too, how much faith Mitch Kupchak has and where he's going to be able to take this team this offseason. I mean, this is really a big test for him to see, whether he retains Kemba and whether, whether he can make those acquisitions, whether it's through trade or if he can move off of some of these contracts. I'm really interested to see in year two now how Kupchak can really, guide the Hornets through this offseason.
I think they need to have a discussion with Kemba as soon as possible to be like, okay, what's the play here? We need to figure this out now because both of us need to start working channels and deciding. Because if the Hornets wait until July to find out if Kemba's leaving or not, if they're in if they let him go test free agency and they don't know, they're getting so behind on whatever they can possibly be doing. They're letting other teams maneuver. And then if Kemba walks away and it's July 5th and you're left with all this money, it's like, crap, we could have been making these trades and making these young plays. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
They have to decide. They need to know before draft night.
They a lot of questions to be answered between now and draft night for both of our franchises. I can tell you that much. Chris, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been good getting filled in on the Hornets. There's definitely could slip to the corner sometimes, and it's just I'm glad we're going around talking to a lot of people, getting a grip on where the league is right now, and it's nice to be able to start with the Hornets.
The Hornets are really interesting. They're kind of forgotten about a lot, and that's fair, but I find them really interesting. They have awesome jerseys. They do.
We're one of those weird, Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Teal and purple is awesome.
Listen, when I think about when I first started watching basketball, the Hornets always stick out to me just because of the jerseys and the Alonzo Mourning, Patrick Ewing stuff obviously is in there, and so to me it's I always remember the Hornets, and it's very strange to me when people think about them as irrelevant. I'm they're always on my mind. I like them. I like those colors. I like tuning in. I like the court. They did a great job with the branding. If for no other reasons, I tune in for that. And Kemba, obviously. But I hope for you guys he stays. But if he doesn't,
the Jordan logo is a great touch too. That's a really nice.
It's a really unique thing.
Yeah,
that I love.
Yeah.
It is.
All right. Make sure you are following Chris. That's Chris Barnewall, Barnewall on Twitter. You write video game dialogue for EA Sports. You're a writer over at Dime. Make sure you're checking him out in all those places. Yeah, man. Hopefully, we talk a little bit more in the future. Hopefully, there's some interesting moves for both of these teams this offseason, and we have a lot more down the line.
Good luck to you guys, and I hope the Knicks give you something watchable next year.
Just one time.
Feel you, man. All right, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. We are back with Anthony Irwin. Anthony, he is a writer over at Silver Screen and Roll. He is the host of Locked On Lakers. What's going on, man? How are you today?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. It's been, by Lakers standards, fairly quiet. And then, the guys over at Silver Screen were nice enough to give me a few days of vacation. So I spent my first day of vacation putting together the nursery. I'm officially washed. I bought a rocking chair.
Wow. I dream of one. All right. Well, so you're mentioning that it's kind of quiet over in Lakers land across the country there, but it's like, what? It's weird not seeing LeBron in the postseason, like everyone's been saying. It's weird, for the last couple of weeks, how much excitement was going around the Lakers and just how much buzz and everything. But I guess what's been kind of, since the playing wrapped up and everything and the off seasons began for you, what's kind of been the strangest thing to come out of it all for you?
Well, I mean, Magic just quit right before the last game of the season.
Got to take the cake.
I'm not kidding. That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen happen in my time covering the NBA. Maybe even of my lifetime, right? It was just the president of basketball operations of an organization stepped down in part, and he mentioned this to tweet.
What wasn't there one quote specifically where he just said, "I'm not gonna be here," when Jeannie comes or whatever? What the fuck was going on?
He was like, yeah, Jeannie. Somebody said something along the lines of yeah, we can't wait to see you guys. We got big plans for tomorrow or next month or something like that. He's like, I'm not gonna be here. So good. It was amazing. I mean, it was hugely unprofessional and borderline cowardice, but it was great. It was funny.
I mean, we're no strangers to that. We are no strangers to complete just chaos. So yeah, glad to see you guys going through it as well. And then you've got a very interesting offseason, I think, ahead of you. This team does. This is just a lot of, when LeBron first signed and everything was going on with the different signings and the players that were coming over to join him, and none of them really being exactly what anybody expected across the league. You now have a lot of those guys coming up on, as a free agent. You have guys like Rondo and Caldwell Pope and Lance Stevenson, JaVale. Everyone seems to be a free agent over there. I guess, what is it that you think the team should prioritize moving forward this summer, and what kind of do you think they can do to, I guess, amend or think differently from how they were playing last summer?
Well, I always joke with my wife that she's awful with directions, right? And one thing that we'll do is, we'll be walking towards the car out of a restaurant or wherever we might be, out of a movie or something like that, and she'll kind of start guiding me, and it'll be in the opposite direction. I always tell Jen, hey, whatever direction you think we need to be going, go the opposite direction of that, and you'll get there sooner, right? And I think that's what the Lakers have to do here is whatever they thought was a good idea last summer, do the opposite of that. They thought, hey, let's get a bunch of ball handlers and nobody who can particularly shoot, or guys like Lance Stevenson and Rajon Rondo shot fairly well statistically, but they don't offer spacing because no coach in their right mind is going to scheme for, we have to stop Rajon Rondo from shooting threes. We have to stop Lance Stevenson from shooting threes. And what the Lakers have to do is, instead of that stupid experiment that LeBron James went so far as to describe as a fart noise coming out of his mouth, do the opposite of that experiment and run it differently next season with shooters and with guys who teams have to scheme against to offer LeBron and the other young guys a little bit more space than they had last year.
So out of the top tier free agents, who do you think they will make a priority?
Well, it's going to be interesting this year because the last time Kevin Durant was a free agent, he didn't even take a meeting with the Lakers, right? Paul George, now famously didn't take a free agent meeting with the Lakers. LeBron obviously took one, but, by all accounts at this point, had his decision made up before he sat down with Magic for 3 hours. And it's going to be interesting who they get meetings with. And it's really wild that we're even talking about it in that sense, right? That we hope that the Lakers can get a meeting with Kevin Durant. We hope that they can get a meeting with Kawhi, and I'd be shocked if Kawhi didn't take an actual meeting with the Lakers. But if they can't get in a room with Durant, then things are really bad. And one of the kind of subtexts of Magic's departure was, did he see some writing on the wall here? Did he look up ahead and were the winds kind of pointing to, no, it doesn't look like they're going to get anybody in. You had put yourself on this weird timeline, oddly enough, and now it doesn't look like you're going to be able to fulfill that. So I think they're going to start with the Durants and the Kawhis. If Durant stays in Golden State and they don't have money for Klay, then the Lakers will be thrilled to walk away with Klay Thompson this upcoming summer. And then from there, you work your way down and you try to talk yourself into one of the other guys on the market.
So I think weirdly, most people are working under the assumption that the Lakers aren't going to get one of those top tier free agents this year.
That's fair.
If that doesn't happen, are they okay rolling money over and taking shots again down the line? Or are we going to see them go after like Nikola Vucevic, Chris Middleton type guys like that and try and build a team around LeBron that way?
I think it'll be more before they, because there's a tier between Durant, Kawhi, Klay, and then Vucevic and Middleton and those guys. It's the Jimmy Butlers, it's the Kemba Walkers, right? And I think I'd be surprised if the Lakers don't walk away with at least a Jimmy Butler or a Kemba Walker type free agent. Now,
if they miss on those guys, do you think they would pay even the lesser tier?
Middleton could be fun with LeBron, I think.
I'm not sure Middleton is really going anywhere, right? I've gotten no inclination from anybody that I've spoken to that anybody in the league has a chance at him. He really likes it in Milwaukee. They really like having him. They seem to be leaning towards paying him and dipping into the luxury tax and stuff. So I don't think anybody's going to be able to pry Middleton away from them. But I think to answer the question, I think they do, but it'll be a shorter term deal. Like I don't think they're going to offer up, a 4-year deal to a Vucevic or, to any of those guys, because like one thing that's what got the Lakers into trouble the first time around, right? And now Vucevic is a better player than Timothy Mozgov and probably Luol Deng even. But that's Genie watched that the first time around. And I think what the Lakers would probably do is look into some kind of a trade into their cap space, utilize their cap space in a trade and try to take on a contract that way before they really dive into the third and fourth tier of free agent this year.
I think that's an interesting notion to bring up at the end there with trading into their cap space a little bit, because it's kind of interesting that the pressure is definitely different than it was last year, where things just kind of feel, or at least from our perspective, it seemed like things really bottomed out for a little bit there. And just like the plan that they had it needed to be pretty much redrawn from the get. And now it's a big point of transition now too. So I was thinking that the pressure is definitely on, and I could see them walking away with a little bit of an overpayment for a player, maybe not Vucevic, but like maybe Chris Middleton or even Jimmy Butler for more years than they would want to, just because that pressure probably is there for them not to stand pat for another year and maximize LeBron. Are there any players that you could particularly see around the league that they would be more than willing to absorb into that cap space, or you might have your eye on yourself?
Bradley Beal is a name
that's where my mind went to. Yeah,
is going to come up. I think he's going to come up quite a bit. We'll see how things go with Portland. Like if they get swept right? If they get, and I believe they're up right now on Denver, or it's at least close as we're recording right now. But if they get swept and Portland has yet another identity crisis going into the offseason where they say, well, can we really realistically win with a Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum backcourt? Is that something we can do? Be fully capped out with those two players? And if they decide that they want to go in a different direction, I think, I don't know how you guys feel about Lonzo Ball, but I think swapping Lonzo and McCollum makes a ton of sense for both sides. Or if you swap Lonzo and Dame, now it would take more obviously than Lonzo, but if you basically centralize a move that puts Lonzo in the same backcourt as McCollum and allows Lonzo plays more off ball. He's a really good defensive point guard anyway, and that kind of changes up the direction that Portland goes in. That's a trade that I think we might hear a little bit about, and there were some whispers about that last year. Remember, Lonzo Ball got surgery way late in the offseason, and it was when his name kept coming up, whether it was in the Kawhi trade, there was some whispers about Damian Lillard. And that it wouldn't surprise me if that came back up again this year.
If I was Portland, I think I'd want Ingram. I think that would, like, getting Dame and Ingram would be the thing that would, having them together would be a reason for me to break up McCollum and Dame. I don't know. And I like Ball. I'm not like someone who does think Ball's good. I think Ball's good. But I don't know if I would break up McCollum and Dame for Ball.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also the one concern. The reason I started with Ball is because Ingram has this shoulder blood clot thing that has a lot of teams really concerned for fair reasons too. And if the reports come out and if it looks like Ingram is able to get right back onto the court after, I think it's like a 4 or 5 month recovery period that you have to take all those blood thinners, and I think he wound up going and getting surgery too. If he gets back onto the court and it looks like he's going to make a full recovery, then yeah, I would probably agree with that. But that's a huge risk that people there in Portland haven't exactly lived a blessed life as it pertains to injuries. And if you trade maybe the most iconic star that the Blazers have had since Bill Walton, since Brandon Roy, for a guy who might have similar injury concerns, you better be right on that one.
See, I think I would try. I don't know if you could get. I don't think you can get Dame from Portland. It would be something involving McCallum.
Mm-hmm. I would mostly agree. It would have to come because Dame said, "All right, guys, what are we doing here?" It wouldn't be something that came out of the blue.
I'd like personally if you guys signed Kemba. I just want the best for that guy, and I'd like him to maybe play with LeBron and win some games and go to the playoffs. And also, you guys get scoring from a position where you kind of need it, at least the outside part, the outside shooting, and it would be fun. He needs a shot-making guard like that. We saw it with Kyrie. Obviously, we know he needs shooting in general. I just think that's like, I don't know about you guys. That's one of my hot takes. I think he's going to sign there. I don't think he stays in Charlotte. I think if the Lakers avenue is there, and if they miss out on a KD or Kyrie, this is kind of a no-brainer for both sides.
Yeah, I really like the fit. Last year, it was weird. The Lakers were the first team in my real memory recently that didn't have a single person who could score out of a pick and roll. They didn't have a single threat who could score out of a pick and roll, and it really hampered them, right? Like that's where the league kind of sort of is right now. And if you put just imagine a Kemba Walker, LeBron James pick and roll. How do you guard that? Especially if the Lakers have any kind of shooting.
Refuses to set the picks for them.
It would take some convincing there, but at the end of the year, LeBron was doing a little bit more screen setting than he had done in years past. The problem was though that the way to get LeBron to do stuff has always been to prove it to him that it's actually going to help the team, right? Mm-hmm. That's how it was in Miami when Spoelstra went to him and asked him to play a little bit more at the 4, it took convincing. It took literally showing him like, no, look how good we are when you're at the 4 and Bosch is at the 5. We're damn near unguardable, right? And he went out and did that. And I think that's where they would have to get to is, look, we screwed up last season. It's going to take a lot of work on all of our parts to be able to make this work. And I think if we get Kemba Walker and you're willing to be a willing screen setter, not all the time, by the way. Like one of the things the Lakers did last season to pretty good effect was running pick and roll with LeBron as the ball handler and Lonzo setting screens. And actually, I at one point I just called Lonzo like a screening Roomba. He would just run around the court looking for people to set screens for, and it worked out pretty well. And so it would have to be a give and take, but that's how you convince LeBron to do stuff that he might not be thrilled to do. Is this is how it will legitimately help the team. This is the position on the court it'll put you in. You'll have the ball running downhill already, going up against a defense with one man down. That's just, there's no way to really guard that. And I think he would buy in.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated to see what kind of concessions LeBron makes, or just what he can do with another star joining him after, going through another year of either playing with the veterans or the young guys, who neither of which were really quite able to step up to the plate like he envisioned. But before we get you out of here, Anthony, just I guess the last thing I wanted to ask you was, so of the free agents that you have for the Lakers, like not all of them are necessarily busts. Like, were there any of them that really performed up to your standards this season? Like, are there any that you think that you would like to bring back to the team?
Well, it's funny, I just kicked off our season review series for the show for Locked On Lakers, and I started by talking about the organization from the top down. So Genie hiring Magic and Pelinka, and then Pelinka putting together that roster that Luke Walton had to make work. And how did Luke actually do in making that work and those things? And nobody really got a passing grade. But the one guy I think that came closest to, being a good signing would probably be JaVale. Unfortunately, he got pneumonia midway through the season, and for somebody who already deals with asthma, that was just a devastating injury for him to have to go through. And it was funny because he said at the end of the year that when he started feeling healthy again, he got back to playing the way he was at the beginning of the season. And at the beginning of the year, that he was playing. There was some. It was early, but there was some. Comeback player of the year or whatever it was, most improved player kind of stuff. And I think he was the closest. Beyond that, though, like Michael Beasley was a disaster. Rajon Rondo was arguably the worst player in the NBA last year. Lance Stevenson was fine-ish, I guess, but his signing came at a pretty immense opportunity cost. They could have had like Wayne Ellington instead, and that would have made a lot more sense. So JaVale is the only guy I would say I would look at and say, yeah, that was a decent signing. But beyond that, it was a pretty. The way I analogized it on the show was to say that, like, how in some college courses you have one big paper that if you ace that paper, you have yourself set up for a C, and you can either coast from that point on and still pass the class, or you can do a little bit more work and go for a B or an A in the course. And I think the Lakers got LeBron, and that was their big signing that got them to a C point in the class. And then from that point on, just kind of said, "All right, we're out."
Fuck
it didn't go. Yeah, it did. And that's kind of how they got a C technically because you got LeBron, but if you have a C with LeBron sitting on the outside of the playoffs looking in.
All right, we're gonna finish off here. The Lakers and Kurt Rambis' name have been in the news a lot. Us Knicks fans have gone through this.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so we apologize that you're dealing with this too. But so I'm pretty sure I know why it's happening. But for Knicks fans that might not, can you explain why he is in a position of power with the Lakers organization?
Do you guys watch Game of Thrones?
Oh, yes.
I've compared him to Theon. And it's because Theon just kept getting opportunity after opportunity after opportunity that he didn't deserve, and it was only because he was standing next to people in power, right? In this case, he's married to Linda Rambis, who was Jeannie Buss's oldest friend, best friend of now 40 years or so. And it's funny nowadays, you see all this stuff. Laker fans are freaking out like, oh my God, she's a shadow. This is how it's been for always, right? They brought Kurt Rambis in as an advisor last year, and it was seen at the time as, it was just going to be, it's Jeannie throwing Kurt a bone on behalf of Linda. And then, we come to find out this offseason that Jeannie's top advisor is now Linda Rambis. And who do you think Linda thinks has the best mind in basketball? It's going to be Kurt. And now the Lakers are stuck with Kurt Rambis.
Is there any chance Phil gets back involved in this when he's legally allowed to?
I don't think so. I think the failed engagement and the scars that came from that are pretty deep. I don't think that's really going to happen. Look, I guess the one pseudo form of optimism here is that by keeping Rob Pelinka instead of going out and getting Bob Myers or Masai Ujiri or Sam Presti or R.C. Buford, all of whom apparently showed back-channeled interest in the Lakers gig. By keeping Pelinka instead of those guys, that's immense opportunity cost. And now the fan base knows about it, right? You bring in Kurt Rambis because he's married to Linda Rambis. Now the fan base knows about that too. And if this front office falls on its face spectacularly, that's the closest the Lakers are ever going to get to the outright shame and embarrassment required to really look themselves in the mirror and say, all right, we really got to stop with this exceptionalism stuff. And that's the one, it's a dark form of optimism, that's for damn sure. But it's the one form of optimism that Laker fans can kind of have is they went so far into this hilarious version of Lakers exceptionalism that if it doesn't work out, it forces their hands to eventually adjust. And hopefully, either it works out and the Lakers have a decent team and a decent organization moving forward, or it doesn't. And some really serious questions start getting asked about, another Dolan situation, right? Dolan inherits the Knicks, Buss inherits the Lakers. And the difference here is that Dolan is an outright owner. There is no way to get rid of Dolan. Whereas with Buss, there are other siblings. She's managing a trust that can technically be voted on to at some point sell the team. And there are outside investors out there who might put a little bit of pressure on her and her siblings to say, all right, we either got to completely rethink the direction of this, or we're going to start putting a little bit more pressure on you guys to get you out of here and find us an owner who has pockets that are deep beyond just Lakers revenue.
I feel like the only hope for the Knicks lie in JD and the Straight Shot, James Dolan's band, making it to another level. But Anthony, thanks a lot for coming on and joining us on the pod. You can follow him at, I had your handle in front of me, it's Anthony Irwin, LA.
Yep, that's me. At
Anthony Irwin, LA on Twitter. Listen to him on Locked On Lakers. Read him at Silver Screen and Roll. It's been a pleasure. Good luck in the offseason, man.
Good luck to you too, guys. I'm really rooting for Durant to go to New York. I'm being completely honest. I want it to happen.
I'd like to see a few more good LeBron years too. So I feel the same way.
There you go.
I accept all of your pity.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks to our guests for coming on, both Anthony and Chris. They were fantastic additions to the pod. And we're going to be going around the next couple of weeks, going around the league, just trying to get a grip on where the rest of the league stands this offseason, to get a better grip on where we stand in the grand scheme of things. So more to come there. Make sure you're checking out the knickswall.com with plenty of plenty of updates on the draft and just a couple of other interesting things we have coming up for this summer. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Give us a 5-star review, please. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Check us out everywhere else. Thanks again for tuning in. We will talk to you all this weekend.